Hello, welcome to the Teaching the Faith at Home podcast, where we want to walk with you as parents raising up children in the Christian faith so that they can be equipped to preach, teach, and reach others and tell them about the salvation of Jesus.
And hello and welcome to this Teaching the Faith podcast in its new iteration. Bear with us as we're testing out this new equipment and having the kind of visual aspect to the podcast now. If we seem awkward, it's because we're awkward. That's just kind of the way it is.
That's a good way, yeah.
That's what you get. As we gather, gather the
We're
two
two
of
or
us
three
today.
are gathered, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
As we're here today, we'd like to officially welcome Principal Matt Mueller, as he is our new principal here at St. Paul's Lutheran School, and we are so glad to have him here. As we enter into this next year of this podcast, you're going to notice it's a little bit different. As Principal Nate Poppy and I started this last year, we did our things this way, and now Principal Mueller is bringing his expertise and his piece and his equipment to bear here. It's great, and so it'll be taking on kind of the personality of the two of us as we work through this together. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm excited to be here with you. I'm excited to be here in St. Paul's and in Concordia. My family's loving what we have here in this transition and going from kind of, I would say, almost big city Omaha down to rural Missouri. And we are really enjoying it. We are loving the community that we have here at St. Paul's. I'm excited to do this podcast because Andrew and I we go back a long way. We met at Concordia University in Seward, Nebraska, where we were dorm mates, like we were next door neighbors, and then we were roommates as apartment buddies with a few other friends, and we've carried that relationship on for over the years, and now it's excited to actually work in that professional capacity. And also as we're walking through some similar things in life. One of the main reasons we want to do this podcast and as a church, as a larger body, is because we want to walk with parents as they're going through raising children. Not only from a school perspective of like, okay, we want to make sure they're academically prepared. We want to make sure they're ready for high school or college or a job career. We also want our kids to know who Jesus is. We want to walk with you through that process of teaching kids. Exactly. What does it mean to have a personal relationship with Jesus, and how that all goes about, and how he's redeemed us through our baptism or through his work on the cross, and then bought us as our own through baptism. And how do we actually impart that to our children so that they remember it when they leave our home, that it stays with them as they go and have their own families. And that's a real challenge, and it's not easy.
Right. And we desire to be transparent as we are professional church workers, and we're trying to do this job of discipling our children well, and it's hard. And as we walk through it, we're the same body of Christ, right? All of us together in this. And so how do we support one another as we do this good work that Jesus has given to us, right? We have these gifts of children that have been given to us, and as parents, we have been tasked with raising them in all the ways, providing for them, but most importantly, raising them as disciples of Jesus Christ. And so I don't know if this has been talked about enough in our circles, and so we just are going to try and bumble through it.
Right, and I think bumble through it is the best way to put it, because this is not an easy task. Raising children in general is not easy, but then also raising them up in the faith is even harder. The world, the devil, our own sinful natures are fighting against us every day, and they make parenting hard, they make discipleship hard, and we want to walk with you. We're not perfect people by any sense of the imagination. I'm not a perfect parent, but at the same time, though, we are striving to do what God has called us to do, to raise our children in that. And so we want to walk through that. We want to talk about the things that we're walking through, talk about the things that we're trying. We want to hear from you on what you're trying and your opinions, and we want to engage with you and make this a partnership where we're talking about what you guys want to hear to help raise your children up in the faith at home.
And I think that's a very important piece, right? any feedback that you have for us, or as we go through and you've been trying some of these things and this just isn't working for our family, but we found this thing, or we discovered this, all the different information trails that everyone has, right? It's just amazing that if you keep that to yourself, then maybe that's withholding things that would work for another family that's in a similar position. And as we think about this, like my family, my oldest is 3, and then we have 2 1-year-olds. That's a little bit of a different place in family life than where the Muellers are, right?
Where our youngest is 4, and then we have 6, 8, and 10. And so like we're on the cusp of walking through middle school. And I know some of you are, in Andrew's stage with like littles. Some of you are in my stage with like kind of the range. Some of you are past that, and your kids are out of the house, or they're in high school, or they're in college, and they're working through things. Some of you that may be listening to this podcast, your kids have kids, and you're like, still there is the discipleship factor, even from that grandparent role, whether it be down to your child or down to your grandchild. And like that's a really cool place to be, and we'd love to hear about all those things. So I think this is the point in the podcast. And again, we're new to this, so bear with me. But this is the point where I ask you to like and subscribe on whatever platform we're on. That's what all the other guys do.
I guess
so. I guess we probably should do that too. But anyways, so Andrew, let's kind of dive into more of the nuts and bolts of what we wanted to get into in this podcast. And one of the things, so we've talked about our motivations and the kind of why this podcast exists, but kind of the question we want to look at is, what are the fundamental principles? Like, what are the fundamental ideas to actually teaching the faith at home? And I think so one, like, what is the principle? And then probably another one is, why should we do it? Like, what support is there out there to say that we should do this? Because I think it's a safe thing to speculate at. And this would be a stereotype that the church is in place to teach the faith. The Lutheran school is in place to teach the faith. And don't get me wrong, those are both true, as most stereotypes are. But is that enough? I guess would be the question.
Well,
and it's a leading question, and the answer is no.
Right.
And so why is it a no?
Well, and I think that's because, well, as the data plays this out in a very real way, which we'll talk about here in just a couple minutes, who does God give the responsibility for shaping children?
Yeah, let's look into the Bible. Where does it say?
It's the parents, right? As we think about what a Lutheran school or what the church does in its educational discipleship stuff, those are auxiliary pieces to the parental vocation, right? Mm-hmm. So we are to aid parents,
correct,
in their discipling their children. And it doesn't matter, you can send your kid to all the right things. You can force them to go to Sunday school and Lutheran grade school and, whatever, all sorts of stuff, youth group. But if the parents are not involved, you're hamstringing the process, right?
Absolutely.
That there is, and we'll see this is the whole piece, and we'll explain the data as well. As we look at how children develop, like, parents are the most important. Right. And if you don't care, if they don't see that this is the most important thing to you, then why would they take that and run with it themselves? Precisely.
And we see this in education too, but this is not just so let me step away from teaching the faith for a moment. Let's just talk about education for a second. When we look at education in general, students that do the best, that achieve the best, they have parents that are invested in their education. And that's not to say that every parent needs to be invested in a particular way. It's that you care in some way, shape, or form. And that and that you support. And we want this to be a team effort, where we are aiding each other, that we are in lockstep, we are in sync with how we want to go about teaching the faith, so that we're working together and that the sum is greater than its parts. Right. Whereas if you look at the individual silos, maybe they're not doing perfect 100% A+ work, but when you add them together, they go above and beyond that. And that's kind of the piece we see. We see that in education all the time. When students have homes that are not supportive, or however that looks like, and it's a tragedy that there's a lot of things that lead to that. So this is by no means to be a guilt trip or anything like that. This is just what the stats say. The students don't do as well in school. So we want to be here as a support system as a school. So when we are working with parents and families on this, not only from an education perspective, but now from a teaching the discipleship, that our sum is greater than the parts. And when we work together, we can help our children become even better. And so that's a piece that we have to look at. So I guess now what is this data we're talking about? Where does this come from? Is this from like the seminary? Like, where does this data, is this from a religious institution? Where is this data coming from that we have to encourage us that parents do need to be involved in their child's education in the faith?
So before we jump into that,
okay.
Just, I think that this is much clearer than maybe we can make it. Like, we don't actually need the data, as helpful as that is. Just think about your children, right? What are the things that they pick up? The things that they think are important, because you've seen this already with my own kids. Marie, she is obsessed with this, right?
Yes.
Why? Well, we're always staring at it. She doesn't really know. She doesn't use it, but they look at it, so therefore I should. This should be something that I value and I want to look at. And so this has created, Luis and I are being very intentional about where we use our phones, how often and whatnot. But the other piece was, as much as I thought it was cute and great, you were there for the beginning of it. My daughter Marie ran around on, I don't know which day this was, Friday maybe, or it was, it was Friday. You guys came over for pizza.
Oh, right.
Marie's running around yelling, "Go Big Red," right? Go Big Red, go Big Red. Which I was like, oh yeah, go Big Red. But at the same time, I'm also like, okay, she sees what I focus on, right? We have taught her those words. And so this is football. And as much as we are Husker fans, and it's a lot of fun, it's great. Is it important? Like, in the long scheme of things, no, not at all.
Absolutely not.
Right. And so if this is a liturgy that she has picked up,
habit.
A habit, this is a rhythm that she now knows. It's like, all right, we are teaching her something. And so what habits, what rhythms are we teaching her? And it's not that those things are evil and that they can't, your kids can't be a Chiefs fan or whatever, but like, where does that get you eternally? And so if we're talking about the most important things, how do we teach them the stuff that endures forever, the stuff that actually is deep for their lives? And so to get to your original question, there's data on this.
Which is wild. It's crazy that there is information. This is being studied in the social sciences, in the psychology world, and there's tons of data that supports it. And the crazy thing is, some of these people that are collecting these data have no relation to or affiliation with a religion at all. And so, like, these liturgies, these habits, play a huge role into teaching the faith to our children.
And we will get into the scriptural side of these things, but we just thought it would be fascinating to start with purely data, right? Sociological research. And then, yes, this is a faith-based deal. So
this is very faith-based. Don't you worry. We're getting there.
But just to start that, like, this is just, people see this. And so the first piece of data that we run into is this guy named Lyman Stone. And so you may know Lyman from... He gets into it on Twitter. I don't do that anymore.
He's big on X, yes.
Yes, right.
X, not Twitter, heaven forbid.
And so all these different pieces, he talks about everything, and he loves getting into data and statistics, and he loves a good debate. But he is an LCMS member. He was formerly a Mission of Christ Network missionary. He was in Hong Kong, and then he was in Canada for a while, but now they're back in Kentucky. But he's a demographer, is actually his job, and he's really about fertility and all sorts of things. So he loves working with statistics and doing surveys, and that is his professional vocation. And so as he's made his forays deeper into LCMS life and world. They're raising their own kids, he and Ruth, and so they've been thinking, all right, what do we need to learn about this? How do we raise our kids in the faith well? And so that kind of spurred him on. You may have noticed, if you're a St. Paul's member, we did a Lutheran Faith and Family Life survey this last year. That was a Lyman Stone partnered with Concordia, Nebraska survey. And so he's been doing this for a while, but he used to do it out of pocket.
Really? Wow.
He did it on his own. He's a very good surveyor, and then loves to take those statistics and run with them. And so one of the pieces of data that we're going to use is from an article he wrote that was actually in Christianity Today.
Correct, yes.
And this was back in 2020, but the data is still very relevant, right? It's funny how, that's only 5 years ago.
It's only 5 years ago, right, exactly. It was during the pandemic.
But we're that was forever ago.
Yeah, and so at the time, he was in Hong Kong,
right.
Which, I mean, being so close to China, they were completely shut down. There was nothing they could really do. And so, at the very beginning of the article, he kind of lays out why they did this. And so he started looking at these statistics, and then looking at his own family and seeing how they applied, which is really interesting. But
you can't send your kid to school.
You can't send your kid to school, right?
Churches weren't gathering, right? And so, if you're really worried about your child's spiritual health, and those things are important. Worship together is a central piece. Right. But it's also something that if that's taken away from you, you still have
the void,
right? Yeah. This influence, and not only during COVID shutdown times, but this is something for every day, right?
Yeah. Right.
And so that is the first piece that we'll kind of look over. I think we were excited to see is Pastor Michael. He sent us this link to a Barna article that they have this research that they've been doing about the same
really,
thing.
Really recent. I want to say
just this year.
Yeah. So this a month. We're talking
just came out
12 days ago. No, I can't do math. The 17th of September is when this was published. And so in this Barna study, it looks at it's very similar to the Lyman study, and it lines up in a really intriguing way. And so we want to tie those together. And what these social studies and these demographers and these surveys are going to do for us is they're going to point us back to the Scripture. They're going to point us back to the biblical context of what we're leading into here, and where we want to go with this podcast over the coming weeks. And it's just really interesting that, again, we're taking these outside the biblical narrative surveys, data, information, and it's going to point us back to Jesus. It's going to point us back to the Bible. It's going to point us back to where we need to go. And I find that so interesting. So are you ready to rip the Band-Aid off? Are we ready to go into this data here?
Sure, let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay,
Yeah.
So what does Lyman have to say 5 years ago while he's in the pandemic and he's looking at all this data specifically related to church and retention? What does the study say?
Well, and this came into a conversation, another one that he was thinking about, just about where's the LCMS in 50 years, 100 years? What does the church look like for our children? And which is kind of a bleak outlook. But he kind of jumps into this argument that's had in Synod about, well, we just need more evangelism, right? We need to baptize more people from outside the faith, which, Matthew 28, yeah, definitely we do. But then he also takes on at least the stereotype of the argument that another side of the Synod just says, well, we just need to have a bunch more babies, right? We will fill the church up by having tons of babies. And he's like, okay, well, I mean, historically, yeah, a lot of Christians come from Christians' families, and that is, we are baptizing, we are, making more Christians this way. And so, true. But what he ends up kind of coming down to is well, we need both of these things, right? We need to have evangelism, we need to have more babies, but then his last piece is and when we have babies, we need to retain them.
Retention became a really big key variable, that you need all three.
Right. And if we don't have all three, and this isn't a doom and gloom thing, right? Christ is king, his church
sovereign.
is going to endure, right?
Absolutely.
Even as our specific church is going to see hard times and whatnot, Jesus' kingdom is eternal. We're good. But as we talk about that, this piece coming out, it's like, why aren't we focusing more on retaining the children that are born and baptized into our church body? And then that creates this question, well, how do we do that?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Because you can have all the babies you want, but if your children all leave the church as they head into adulthood, well, okay, first of all, that's tragic. Also, you're not doing anything really for the church at large, right? And so that's I don't know.
It's scary. It's doom and gloom. It's sad. Like if we fail this mission, we are just going to make a bunch of people that don't care about Jesus. And and really, so like that's sad and that's depressing if we think about it too much. But it's also like I think it brings me back to Pascal's paradox, where the idea of like if I believe in God, what's the risk? If I don't believe in God, what's the risk? And he kind of goes through Pascal's wager, and it brings it through. It's like it's like, okay, it's not the end of the world if we raise up children that don't believe in God, but there is a God. They're going like, okay, that is bad. But the other way around, I forget. I'm screwing this all up. I apologize. This is why we're not professional podcasters, and we're going to stick to our day jobs. But regardless, though, it is something that we need to be worried about because we're just bringing in kids into the world. And I think my worry would be is like if my kids decided, hey, this isn't for me. Not only is it sad that they're going to be, I won't see them in heaven. That's super depressing. But it's also they might be bringing others with them. So because there is, especially as they're raising up, there is peer pressure at every age. And it's like retention is a really important piece.
Well, that's how I even think about at a personal level. There is this stereotype about pastors' kids, right?
Right.
So I'm a pastor's kid. My mom was a pastor's kid.
My wife is a pastor's kid.
Yeah, and then now I have pastor's kids. And my wife is a pastor's kid too. Like,
right.
There's too many of us.
So many PKs.
Anyways, as we see that stereotype, like, what are pastors' kids like?
There's it seems like there's two routes, two stereotypes.
Right.
They're either goody two shoes that end up going into church work sometimes, or something along those lines, or they end up being crazy rebels.
Right. And they rebel against
they
go
go
Jesus,
hard the other direction.
Right. They don't want anything to do with it.
Nothing to do with it.
And obviously there's people that are in the middle, right?
Yes, those are very much stereotypes that we put people in boxes, and really it is, like you said, a continuum.
But it is interesting that like it kind of plays out that way, at least in high school with the pastors all around our town, right? So either, right, you were part of FCA and you were, in youth group and all these sorts of things, or you were the one out there like causing all sorts of trouble. And it's weird how that plays out. And I think that that's something that's been scary to me because one of the pastor's kids that was in high school during my time, he like, it was his job to try and tear down the church and disprove it and all these things. And because he was a pastor's kid, like he had some weight with those kids in my school, and he led a number astray. And like, as much as that had to be a heartbreaking experience for his parents, it's also like, wow, that's dangerous and
very dangerous.
And so I guess for me, I just feel this weight that is like, I love my kids and I want them to know Jesus for all eternity. I also do not want to screw them up and cause them to go out there and be an enemy of Jesus and his church. And and I think that that's probably a place we should all be kind of aware of how this can take place. And yes, it seems like the stakes, or we talk about them being high for pastors and their families, but this is every Christian family's walk, right? And
Agreed,
struggle.
Yeah, and I think struggle is the best way to put it. Like you look back to the Proverbs verse about raise up a child in the way he should go, and they will not depart from it. That's true, but we're also sinful human beings, and we don't follow things perfectly.
Right.
That includes our children. That includes us. And so it's as hard as we try to disciple our children to stay in the faith. The devil has ways of working. The world has ways of working. Our sinful nature has things that will draw us away, and sometimes it's out of our control, and we have to let God be God, and he will be sovereign, and he will do what is right. At the same time, though, sometimes people go this way, and because they have been discipled as children, because they have they know the word, they've done the memory, they've done all the things, and it's locked inside their brains and their subconscious. Sometimes they do make a U and come back, and that happens. And I've met a lot of pastors that are like that,
Right.
where they kind of went this way, and they learned, oh wow, this is really what sin is like, and this is the destructive power of what it can be, and it comes back.
And they very clearly follow that lost sheep path, right?
The lost sheep path, right? And the shepherd goes and brings them home, and it's
A joyful day.
that is very joyful, and it's so much rejoicing happens.
And yeah. And so we talk about the worst case scenario pieces here, but like we also have not been given this spirit of fear, right?
Correct.
So
yes.
as we walk, we do that in the confidence of Jesus, that his spirit is at work, that his word does its thing, that he loves your children. And as we baptize our kids, we have this wonderful confidence, like they have been claimed in Christ Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
God looks at them and he says, this is my child. He looks at them, he sees Jesus, his sacrifice, his life. And then he also is very much about chasing them down if they do err. I think for us, it's as we live in that confidence, we also hear Jesus' words, and let the little children come to me and do not hinder them.
Yes.
Right? It's more than just like, well, I'm just going to get out of your way so you can go to Jesus. Like those parents are carrying their children to Jesus, right? That as we, as parents, hear Jesus's command there, how do we not only take down the barriers to Jesus and do not keep them from going to him, but how do we encourage, right? How do we usher them towards Christ? And that is what we're doing here. And I think that's Lyman, to bring it back around.
Yeah.
This is what he is getting to. And what is the data? What does this look like? Because, there's a lot of folks in the church who's like, well, I brought my kids to church every single Sunday.
Yep.
And some of them just leave the church later. And like, well, why isn't it doing? Like, I brought them to Jesus. And you did. And let's not downplay, especially in today's day and age, to the idea of going to church every single Sunday, which as much as that's normal for us, we have to. It's part of our job, right?
That's not normal outside of this, yes.
Right.
It's very countercultural to be going to church regularly.
In which that's something, I mean, and dear listener, if you are someone who is here, once a month or something like that, I'm not trying to shame you, but it's also something that the pattern, right? Sunday being church day, like it's time to go and receive Jesus's gifts. That is something that resonates with your child, right? And if it becomes what if we feel like it, or if we weren't up too late, or whatever, just today I'm just not feeling it, they are going to take that with them. And if you are lukewarm on that now, they're just going to ditch it. Like that is actually what the data shows.
The data does show that.
And so if you desire for your children to be active, even passionate, like I always think this is Jesus freaks, right?
Jesus freaks.
Bring
back DC Talk.
Yeah, that's right.
Good old 90s.
That is what we desire. Like all out for Jesus. That is who we are. He claims our whole life. That is the life of a Christian. If that's what we want for our kids, then we have to model that. And that means that we show this is the most important thing. All right. And so that's something not just to shame people, but it's if this is your pattern that you've become more wishy-washy on it, in the days ahead, how do you look and say, all right, well, how do I really kind of batten down the hatches on this? Exactly. Let's get them to church every Sunday, show them that this is important for me and for them. Right. And then we get to Lyman's study, which shows that it's actually about more than that, right?
Yes, very much so. And like to add on to that from a data perspective, and let's just talk about households and parents. There's crazy, and I don't have the study in front of me, but there is a lot of data that shows when, if just the mother pushes, like, so let's just assume we're in a two-parent household. If the mother pushes the children to go to church, there's a percentage. This is not the correct percentage, but I want to say it's like 60%. They'll stay in the church. If the father is the one that pushes and says, "Hey, we're going to church," it's in the 80s or 90s. Like it's of the retention. and I wish I had the study in front of me. That's not one of the two we're looking at. But like, okay, so there's one statistic.
There's
this is
a
a much older.
significance.
There's a large
Right.
significance, and that's biblically founded. Where we look in Genesis and how, or if we look in Ephesians chapter or something like that, one of Paul's letters. I'm not as you see, he's much more
5, 6,
biblically knowledgeable than I am. So bear with me on this. But 5, 6, where he talks about husbands and wives and how we should do things. That needs to happen, and so like that's not what we want to focus on today, but that's just one example, and that's much older data.
Well, it shouldn't surprise us when the data plays out with Scripture.
It literally pulls right into Scripture, right?
And to those of you who are just like these strong mothers, right, who are just doing everything you can to pull your whole family, and you're working to pull your kids and your husbands, like,
keep fighting.
Good for you.
And
I mean, like that's yeah. I think it can be kind of discouraging, like if that's you, to hear, wow, my husband has all this pull. Keep going, right?
Right. Because you have a lot of pull on him.
And if you both duck out,
game over.
Right. If you throw in the towel, that's something that in those moments, pray, right? Trust that the Lord is going to do his work. Because that's the other side. Like we have the data, but like the Spirit also does crazy stuff. His word is effective. It does what it says it's going to do. But we have to deal also with the data. And when that meshes up with what Scripture says, we're like, well, what are we doing? Like, why wouldn't we take this? And so as we look at this first article, so just the title, in which this is behind a paywall, so you have to...
Yeah. I don't think we can distribute that without...
right.
But we can give you so I'll put it in the description of in both the podcast form and the video form of where you can find this at Christianity Today. But go ahead.
But the title is just, want your kids to stay Christian, double down on home discipleship. Mm-hmm. And this is something, Lyman, he did the same presentation in 2022 at Concordia Mission Institute.
Oh, nice.
And use the same data. But as you go through, the real question is, what is the marker, right, that kids will remain Christian into adulthood? So like post 30 years old, right, mm-hmm. is kind of the survey age set. And the things that were found out really have to do, this doesn't have any of the graphs in it. Oh, there it is. As they look at what we're telling about kids remaining in the church, okay? And the crazy data that stuck out to me is that the probability of remaining in the faith by frequency of family religious activities with controls for parental religiosity, okay, and 3 large surveys. So that's the official name. So essentially, what is the percent of kids that ended up remaining in the church to age 30 mm-hmm. based on the estimated number of religious activities in the home per week, okay? And so this is not counting church, so like worship
Sundays
services.
Pulled out of this particular thing. So this is Saturday this is like Monday to Saturday.
And so this is actually kind of assuming you are every Sunday churchgoers. And so the piece is, if you do nothing in your home, right? If you don't talk to your kids mm-hmm. about Jesus, if you don't read the Bible together, if you don't have set aside times for mm-hmm. devotion or prayer or anything like that, if you don't do any of that at home, but you go to church every Sunday, or even if you send your kids to Lutheran school, the percent chance that your child remains, or at least this is
these backwards. Are all probabilities. These are all just kind of this is the probability that this will happen, I guess you can say. So again, there's outliers, but also so again, like you said, no, we're not including church. We're not including Lutheran grade school.
This isn't predictive, right?
Okay. Okay. Good point. It's good point. Not predictive. This is just the breakdown, I guess you could say that.
Based on the data from these, right? Yeah. Okay. From these families surveyed. All right. 65% of these kids, right, remained in the church to adulthood if their parents just brought them to church and did nothing else. Okay. So 65%.
Not bad.
Like, I know for some people, they're just kind of like, all right, I'd take that back in high school. It's fine.
I mean, that's a D minus.
Just skimming through.
It's just getting
barely,
through, right? C's get degrees. Okay, here we go.
But when you're talking about your child's faith life, like, is that good enough? Is that good enough? And which it was interesting, and which I don't know if if this family is listening, sorry, I won't use any names. I was talking to somebody, and the response to this data was just like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. So that's like 2 out of 3 kids, right? It's like that checks out.
True.
It's like that was
Yeah.
my family. Like two of us are still in the church,
yeah.
and one has left, and we didn't do anything at home, and just came to church on Sundays. And I'm like, well, that's tragic. I mean, like, so as a parent, like, are we willing? Like, am I cool with the idea of just like, well, 2 of my kids will probably make it, probably.
Right.
But
I'd be sitting.
Which one am I going to lose, and is that good with me, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'd be sitting with potentially losing 2 because like that's not 75%. I've got 4, so I mean, like that's 2 of my 4 is probably more likely than it is than the other way.
Right, and the amazing part of this study is to show that with each family household devotional activity, right?
Yes.
That percentage goes up. And so
and when you say household devotional activity, we're talking like praying at the dinner table, like doing a devotion after dinner, reading bedtime prayers, or like doing bedtime prayers.
So I think that,
or you think it's a little more than that?
Well, trying to what Lyman was
say?
actually saying in the presentation, he said like praying at dinner didn't necessarily count,
Okay.
like just a table prayer, but that's important. It was a good thing.
It is a good thing.
But he was talking about like more standalone. So if you do like a devotion after dinner, or so like I know some families will like read Portals of Prayer, like that counts, right? Or you do like a little devotion before bed or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That it's the focused time with parents and kids on scripture, on prayer, on something. So like, yes. So in which it doesn't have to be an hour long. It can be like a 5-10 minute deal.
Exactly.
But that is what he's talking about. And so as you go up, it's amazing that if you do that one time a week with your family, that percentage goes from 65 up past 80%. And then if you do it twice a week, you almost hit 90. If you do this 3 times, and 3 times is kind of like the sweet spot, it goes a little bit up for 4, and then it kind of like is.
So 3 was at 95%.
95%.
So yeah, you go after 3, you start hitting that lovely diminishing returns thing, where now it's, but
it pretty much just kind of like evens out.
It evens
really.
out, right? And so,
but around 95%.
3 is kind of like 3 times a week. So 3 times a week where we have just a little 5-minute devotion. It could be waking up and reading the Portals of Prayer off your phone. That's my favorite devotional app that I have.
Or like any Lutheran Hour Ministry,
or the Treasury of Daily Prayers, like going through reading one of the passages in there. Like again, we're not talking about you need to sit down for an hour
do
and
an
have
exegetical study with your children.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not gonna break down Psalm 51 and go break through all the law and gospel of everything that David went through after his confession. Like, no, we're talking like,
if you do that, cool. But but you don't have to do that.
No,
right?
been there, done that. That was a lot.
Yeah.
But like, just again, something small, and like, let me speak as just a parent here. This is something, an area where my family can improve. Just speaking as the father of the household, like this is an area we are not doing very well. Lives get busy. We have activities. We have this, and these are all excuses. There's homework, and I'm sorry if there's too much homework. We're working on. I'm not working on that. Anyways, life hits us, yet we're still called to do this, and so we fail, and we can get in this scenario. We can get better at, and when we want to, and like again, just finding that one little time, that one little, like in building that habit of, hey, we want to try to, we're going to do this little devotion here. We're going to do the devotion here, etc.
Well, and how important, like, that you can raise that percentage. I mean, like, according to the past, right, study,
the past says,
it shows that this is how it's probably going to work, right? Mm-hmm. And as we have faith and we believe that the word is efficacious, that it does stuff, that walking with your family through scripture is going to have impact on your heart and your kids' hearts. And again, like thinking back to that, just common sense, that if your children see you saying, hey, we're going to do this because this is important, that is going to stay with them, right?
Yes.
We talked about Jesus with mom and dad. That was something that was very important to our family. And so, I mean, this makes sense as much as this data is like, wow. I mean,
yeah.
But also, if you worry about your kids' faith, which in the most positive sense of that statement, you should, right?
Yes.
It is your job that God has given to you.
And that
then
vocation piece, yeah.
This is an easy way to do it, and it'll be good for you too. Like, I mean,
Right.
that's
Yes, absolutely.
That's the piece here. And so, I mean, this is just kind of a groundbreaking piece. Is Lyman's like, do something, right?
Something.
And so, even if you're afraid of like trying to every single day, but I mean, in which again, this isn't oh, look how good we are. We have just built this in, especially to our bedtime routine, right? And so we do this every single day, that we have just a little devotion. Like before bed, we say our prayers, we sing a hymn or a song or whatever, and like it's right there, and it takes a total of 10 minutes, maybe 15 if the kids are just being crazy.
Right.
But it's bedtime routine, and like everybody has a bedtime
You're going to be
routine.
spending, especially when you get littles, you're going to be spending 10 to 30 to 45 to an hour doing bedtime routine anyways. So what's modeling, taking some of that time and putting it into this?
Right, and especially knowing this,
that.
right?
Like developmentally, the child needs that. They need to build that detachment with their parents. They need to be able to have that wind down time, and like, so again, it's just finding those spots where we can just insert that in. And again, we don't have to do this every day. If we can do it 3 times,
Right,
we're at 95%. Holy, that's crazy. That's A+ work. That's amazing. If we even, and if like this is one of those things where it's like, okay, man, I have a really hard time building habits. I have a really hard time being self-disciplined because some of like that is a real struggle. Just do one time. Pick one day of the week. It's Tuesday night. It's devotion night, guys. Here we go. Let's do this. And it might not be amazing. The first couple times it might feel really awkward, like this podcast right now. I apologize. It might be one of those things where it's like, okay, man, I just don't know what resource to do. I don't know what, you might feel really unequipped. That's okay. Do it. Try it.
do something.
Do something.
And I know that sounds law, but it is good law for us, right? That's the law today is bring the gospel to your kids, right? And the thing is, we're not just throwing you out to the wolves on this. Like the purpose of this podcast is like, all right, so this is the data. What do we do? Like, what resources can we provide? How can we walk with you? How can we talk through what's been good for our families, which may not be good for your family, but
then share with us what is good for your family. And so in this also, again, back to what we said earlier, this is a partnership piece. So when I'm going to transition to the Barna study now. So this again was released like a couple weeks ago, and this one's titled "Parents and Church Leaders Disagree on How to Best Disciple Children." And it's like, what's going on? And so the big part of this survey is who is responsible for teaching discipleship to children. And parents, like, so the data, they have a lot of different data here, and you ask church leaders, they say it should be at home. You ask parents, they say it should be at church, and it's like, okay, well, there's this back and forth, like what's going on here? What is actually happening? And what we end up seeing here is that when children are paired with an adult mentor, and if we think about, let's back up here, what is an adult mentor? An adult mentor is just an adult that can be trusted, that the child can then bring their pains, their grievances, their troubles, their joys to this adult, and this adult can be trusted to give them good information back. This mentor could be a teacher, it could be a coach, it could be a family member, it could be a parent, it can be an older sibling, it could be it could be a church member, it could be one of our elders, it could be Grandma so-and-so that you see in pew number 17 on the
seminary. We always said Grandma Schmidt.
Grandma Schmidt. Okay, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. So Grandma Schmidt in row 17 on the lectern side, like it could be her. But when they have an adult mentor, the study was between of parents of 5 to 14-year-olds thinking about how your child's experience at church and how true they are to following them. So they've got these experiences. They're going to church on Sunday. They go to Lutheran school or whatever, or any combination of these things. How much are they actually living out these things when they have an adult mentor versus if they don't have an adult mentor, where there's that relationship? There's a 40% jump in observations that the child is truly living out what they're saying and what they're being involved in. A 40% jump. So 24% that biblical principles are integrated into their lives without a mentor. With a mentor, 64%. Humongous jump. And so what does this tell us? What do we take away from this for our conversation here? Is that we take away that there needs to be that adult relationship. There needs to be, in order to really dive into this and to disciple, we need that relationship. You need that wise older peer, or not peer, wise older person to help you, to guide you, to bounce ideas off of, to lay your heart out in front of them when things go terribly, to celebrate in those joys. And then all the while, if we have the right mentor here, to be pointing to Jesus the whole time. And then that continues that growth as well.
And, right, parents are the obvious built-in
Parents are the built-in mentor.
Right. That's how God designed it. Now, granted, in this conversation, I think that there's something to connecting kids to other trusted, faithful mentors, right? And I think that's something that the church, I mean, it happens organically.
It does.
Especially in certain communities that you are, so if you grew up in Concordia, you're born here, like
there's lots of mentors.
4 generations, right? You probably are connected to those sorts of people. But sometimes, especially in a larger congregation, that we can use a nudge, like to connect people.
Yes.
And so that's something that we've kind of started to think about. Well, how do we connect kids, especially from our school or from our high school, to adult trusted mentors? And that's something that is yet to kind of
exactly, and that's going to look different for every family.
Right.
Obviously, having the parent as the mentor is a great place to I guess a great place to start.
I think it's essential.
That is one of the, and I think maybe it'd be good for us to think about this as multiple mentors.
Right.
So at our household, when we were back in Omaha, we had some really dear friends that were faithful. They had kids about the same age as us. They were in a similar walk of life, and we trusted them, and we would have our 2 eldest daughters, go on a coffee date with the mom of this other family because we trust her. We knew she was faithful, and this was an opportunity for our kids to have that adult mentor. And it was wonderful. It was a wonderful experience. It's something we wish we could continue on, but they're still in Omaha.
Well, there's certain rhythms, right, in life that as kids are developing, right. If you have middle school, high school kids, right?
And that's where my kids are at the cusp of.
Probably hit a point where they think you know nothing, right? And so you can tell them things, you can continue to tell them things, but to have someone else who they trust and look up to tell them that same thing is going to have a much deeper impact in that moment, right? Yes. Than if you were to say it. And so like that's where we're a body of Christ, and so how do we see things? And I just think to the idea of, it takes a village, which is that's just a perfect phrase. Common cultural knowledge, right? Growing up at the church I was at, it was a church plant. I had 25 aunts and uncles, in my mind, just all of these people that I trusted in our little church plant, that they just cared for me, and I trusted them, and I could just name off all these people right now who had an impact on me. And they were not only my Sunday school teachers, but you had these, the trustees and elders of the church who just kind of took time, and it wasn't always like something ridiculous. It was just, they saw me, they poured into me, they pointed me to Jesus, and that is something that has had a long-term effect on my life. And I think it makes sense. If you grew up in any sort of close community, which the church should hopefully be that, then you understand. And how do we see that our kids have that same sort of support? Because we can't do it all alone.
No, right? No. And in fact, it's dangerous to try to do it all alone, to not let anybody in, because it's gonna heap all this weight onto your shoulders, and then you have this burden you can't carry.
Right.
And again, that it takes a village. It really is true that we need to rely on each other, and we need to develop those relationships to where we can be comfortable enough with each other in order to do that. And that comfort level is going to vary, and it's okay for it to be a look different for this family and be different for another family. Right. And so that relational piece of where we can be together, we can all be pointing our kids to Jesus and everything we do, and be there to pick them up. Be there to lift them up, dust them off, encourage them, but also be there to celebrate with their joys. Be there to point them back to Jesus when they decide to go astray, because we will. And those are all really valuable pieces. And so I think it gets me really excited.
Right.
It really does. It gets me really excited for this church, for this school, because we are all partners in this. When children come to St. Paul's Lutheran grade school, like, they are getting mentored daily by their teachers.
Right.
And so kids have a built-in mentor when they come to our school. All right. And then when they leave school, Lord willing, our parents are adding to that. We're doing that devotion once a day. And then we're coming together on Sunday mornings, and we're seeing each other, and we're seeing Grandma Schmidt in row 17 lectern side.
Right.
And we're saying hello, and she's asking us about our week, and she's celebrating with us, and she's there, and and she pours into those kids as well. And then we repeat the process, and we repeat the process, and we build this habit. We build this community that builds up the church.
Well, it's a multi-generational
from this multi-generational thing, and it just
Right.
keeps rolling.
And that is the model of a healthy church, right?
It really is. Yeah.
And well, this is a longer conversation. We only have so much time.
We're doing good. And this kind of leads, like, let's transition kind of to our closing today of, like, where are we going next with this podcast? So we talked about some data. We want to give you something practical you can walk away with that's useful. So what we want to do in the next couple episodes is we want to start going through what habits, what things can we do to help really foster this discipleship at home. And so what we want to do, I'm going to grab this off my bookshelf here, is we're going to start going through habits of the household with you, and we're going to go through chapter by chapter, talking about different pieces, different ways that we can develop habits in the household that lead to discipleship, that point to Jesus, that are beneficial for discipline, that are beneficial for our marriages,
Right.
that just make our families strong and robust, and that give us that space to care for each other inside the household. So that's what we want to go through first, is habits of the household.
And I would very highly recommend this book. I mean, obviously we're talking about it. Justin Early, he is just a dad, a layman, right?
A layman, yes.
And he's from, I think, a Presbyterian kind of tradition, kind of some Reformed theology stuff. But as far as like what we're going through here, this all lines up, right, with our own doctrine.
And we're going to go through it with the Lutheran faith, like with that Lutheran perspective. And we're going to try to we're going to extract the things that are applicable. We want to give you kind of that summary of, okay, here's what we can apply today, and here's what that might look like.
And so I would
Here's what
recommend,
it looks like in our households.
Yeah, if you purchase this book, it's a great resource.
It's a good read.
And so just preparing that when he references things, like he talks about catechisms to buy, he's not going to speak towards our catechism because he's of this different denomination. But as far as the content of what he's laying out, like, this is just really great stuff. Actually, it was funny. So Lyman Stone, again, which, not that he knows everything, but he and his wife, Ruth, last year did a pretty much a habits of the household sort of presentation where they were talking about how do we do this, forming our children in the faith at home. And this was one of the books that he recommended. And so it kind of all fits together. But as we go through, you'll see that it gets to this idea of household liturgies, and to kind of unpack that word that doesn't just mean like the service in the hymnal, right? As much as
we're going to unpack that in the next episode, is what is this idea of liturgy,
right,
and what is the idea of habit,
right, because
that's the really foundational piece to the entire book,
right,
and into where we want to go with that,
but
which is really exciting.
So in the end, as we unpack that, then we'll get into what does this look like in your house for these different things, and so hopefully, I know that this gave us a lot of ideas as Luis and I went through it. And so hopefully it does the same for you.
Yeah. And so we look forward to joining you next time to talk about habits of the household and that first introduction about what are habits and what are liturgies. At this point, we're out of time, so we're going to sign off. I'm Matt Mueller.
Pastor Andrew Lehenbauer.
And we'll see you on the next one.